I'm Julia Michaels, and I've been in Rio since 1995 originally because I was married to a Brazilian and brought up children in Brazil, and I've lived in Brazil for 30 years. And last August, almost a year ago, I decided that I wanted to do this blog called Rio Real Blog, and to help communicate in both English and Portuguese what's going on with the transformation of Rio, which is a very magical moment for the city right now. And the blog tries to cover every aspect of the transformation, but I do end up writing a lot about public safety because that is at the core of what's going on.
And my name's Taylor Barnes, and I'm a reporter. I've been here off and on since 2007, so now I write for most of the CS Monitor and the Miami Herald, and write about security a lot too. Abroad, there's this idea, and I think it comes a lot, and you can tell me if you think it's different, but I really do attribute it to the film, to the City of God film. Just, there's such a fascination with favelas and security in here, and the idea that Rio is a very dangerous, very deadly place. Foreign audiences, be it foreign editors, foreign readers, very much link in. They know the term favela. It's somehow distinct from slums in other countries, and they definitely want to read about it. For example, when Obama had his big Latin America tour earlier this year, I told my editors I said, okay, look, there's going to be two portions of the visit. He hasn't said which, he's going to pass in a favela. He's been very vague. And then after that, he's going to give a very big speech in the Teatro Municipal. I can't make it to both. They're going to be very tight in the schedule. I can only do one. Which are you interested in? Every editor said, we want to see the favela visit. You got to find out where it is. We need to see that.
And his visit brought home a very key aspect of this transformation, which is the outsider looking on what's happening here. And I think this is one of the catalysts, is with the upcoming sporting events. So many more people are interested in favelas and are looking at Rio. Yeah. And the natives here who have lived for years with danger and with inequality, and put up with it. All of a sudden, when you have outsiders saying, like Obama said on his departure, I'll be back, I'm going to be checking on you, it's a different way of thinking about your city, and it's really helpful, in fact. We're talking about integrating a city, really, and it's a huge, ambitious project. It's pioneering, and there's so much yet to do. It shakes up so many people, it brings up a lot of questions, but it's something really to admire, I think. The most important thing that needed to change, and was beginning to change when I began to write, was that the city was becoming a safer city because of new policies and new alliances and good politics. One of the key aspects of this new public safety policy is that for the first time in memory, the three levels of government, the federal, the state, and the city governments, are working hand in hand. And that had not happened, for any time that anyone can remember. There was a strategy, amazingly enough. There was a plan, and so they picked favelas that are key in terms of the sporting events, the favelas that are around the Maracanã soccer stadium, and they also picked certain ones which would, once occupied and pacified, it would look good for the middle class of Rio, and that would garner then popular support for the policy. And because there had been so many attempts previously to reduce the violence in Rio, failed attempts, that people were very, very skeptical, and there still are a lot of very skeptical people about this policy. The professed aim is not of the pacification policy, the public safety policy, is not to attend to the poorest communities. It's a strategic security policy. They have said outright, especially the social UPP program, that they are not, the poorest parts of Rio are in the western part of the city, and they're not there. There's evidence that I see of the sort of traditional middle class of Rio turning against the governor, turning against the security policy, because I think they are deeply shaken up by the idea of the integration and what that means in terms of their attitudes towards the people who live in favelas and those people who serve them, who they've long regarded as inferior. Very early on, they pacified favelas close to where I live. There are anywhere from 600 to 1,000 favelas in Rio, so it is a drop in the bucket what they're doing. But I and many other people immediately began to feel, hey, we can walk around Copacabana and Ipanema and we don't have to worry when it's dark. There's a lot more police out. You can take buses more easily. And I also noticed that a lot of restaurants started putting chairs outside, benches outside, tables outside, because it used to be either that you were worried that somebody was going to come and rob everybody or that beggars would come. And they've also taken a lot of beggars off the streets. So it's just a lot more comfortable. And the fact that the favela right here, actually 3, have been occupied and pacified, and this is the case in a lot of other parts of the city as well, but I feel it in my own skin, has helped real estate prices. And so, people are now able to live in areas where they couldn't feel comfortable before. Not only those of us who live on the asphalt, as it's called, in the non-favela parts of the city, but the people who live in those same favelas have seen the prices of their homes appreciate. So it's really been so positive in so many different ways. I was going to say, there have been public opinion surveys which show that there's overall support in the whole city, in all classes, for the policy. But there's still a lot of improvement that's needed. Well, there was also a survey done recently of pacification police themselves, which found that a lot of them are not that happy with their jobs. That's sort of a general thing with police, but they need more training. They need to understand better what community policing is, and I think there has to be maybe a better selection process. It's not clear exactly what it is, but there apparently are some police who have been drawn into the pacification police out of the main military police, which the pacification police are part of, who would rather not have been recruited for that, who would rather be going in and shooting, using their guns and stuff. A lot of people go into the police because they like the adrenaline. And there's less of it when you're a pacifier.
You can easily find critics of security here, even though plenty of people are happy on the ground. So, of course, there are the critics who are outside of pacified areas. So you give an example, there's 17 UPPs now, which covers something, I think the last estimate I put in was 60 favelas, and they say there's between 600 to 1,000 favelas in Rio. So, of course, there's lots of people that aren't yet benefited by this. And, of course, then the big fear to come is that these policemen, as people always talk about the Tropa de Elite 2, the second movie, that the policemen are going to get too powerful. Instead, we'll install a new form of violent occupiers, and that we'll have milicianos, we'll have strongmen police taking over. So I think that fear is still very active. Another example I had, it was an American who lives here in Ipanema, was recently telling me, you journalists, you emphasize violence too much. You're painting a picture like this is just a very terrible place. And my sort of response was, Rio and Brazil overall, and very particularly Rio, still has an absurdly high homicide rate for a country of this development, this income level. Brazil's classified as an upper middle income country. And we went to the presentation by the security minister where they were for the first time touting, look at what a drop we've had in homicide statistics, but still really, Rio's homicide rate is about 30 for 100,000 per year. U.S. is still considered high for a developed country, and it's about 6. Western Europe has between 1 and 2. And I think you need to have more of a reflection of that when you're asking about transformation. This is still a city where that many people are being killed each year in urban violence. And cities in the Northeast, or even we give Rio a lot of focus, have the highest rate within all of Brazil is in Maceió and Alagoas, which is hovers around 100, which is very absurd for a country at this development level. So I think people need to be asking the question, who's being killed, why, how are we taking account for it? You can get still a lot of good information from the papers here. You just have to know, you have to be able to string together the events, which Julia does really, really well, to be able to string together what's connected, whereas what you give all these very micro pieces in the daily newspapers.
But I know that what is on TV is pretty superficial. It's very quick. You know, you really can't get very much depth with that. So I look for the depth in print journalism here. And I think there's a lot of problems beginning with the fact that they probably don't have enough reporters, and the reporters don't have enough time to do the stories that they're trying to do. And so there's a lot of rushing, I think, and they end up not stopping to ask certain questions that need to be asked, or not explaining things that need to be explained. And Globo doesn't have really any competition to speak of. And I think that, I worry sometimes that the security policy, which I think is very positive, is going to lose ground among the populace because they are not sufficiently informed about what's happening with it. And I think a lot of people, Global could say anything they want about that positive, which they usually do because they support the governor, or at least they have until quite recently. And no one will really, everyone will take that with a giant grain of salt because it's Global saying it, And then who else can give us information? You can't, if the state government starts doing PR, that's going to be suspect too, So how can the word get out that there's this change, this enormous change is happening? I don't know. If you've been burned as many times as Brazilians have been burned, you don't want to be seen as somebody who believed in something and got duped. It's there's a word in Portuguese for that, trouxa, and nobody wants to be a boob. So I think there's a certain attitude of like, I'm not going to be really getting on this bandwagon yet because I still want to see what's going to happen. And I think it's also healthy. You should question, and I think people need to participate more. They need to act on that skepticism more, and say, hey, wait a second, you said it's going to cost this much and it's costing that much, and how come, and blah, 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 So.
Are you worried that you're going to end up being a boob?
No, I'm not. It's an interesting question, but I really believe that that history is going in a direction, and that it is a positive direction, and we're part of it.